This video explains record keeping in a world at war, GMT's World War II grand strategy game. Support this channel by hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. The creation of this video was prompted by some anxiety being expressed about record keeping in the A World at War Facebook group, which is a forum for new A World at War players. A World at War players would do well to heed the words of the first person to play the United States.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
This is not to say that there aren't things we should be afraid of. So let's dive in and see if learning about record keeping in A World at War dispels the nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror that some new players feel. First, we'll look at the record keeping for things like BRPs and units. Then we'll end with a brief discussion of why record keeping is important and how players can minimize the time spent on it. The first examples of record keeping in this video are taken from my 2020 convention game, which was played remotely because of the COVID pandemic, so full records are available. It's an ill wind that blows no good. Incidentally, a full video report of that entire game is available. See the World at War website under Contributions, then Game Reports, to access it. We'll start with the year start sequence, which involves filling in the year start sequence record sheet for each major power that is in the war. There is one such sheet for each major power for a total of 8 sheets, some of which won't be used each year. We will do the German year start sequence for 1942. Germany's BRP base from 1941 is entered in the top row. It was 155. There were no changes to the German BRP base in 1941, so the same value is entered for the end of year base. Germany had a BRP surplus of 96 BRPs. With the 1942 growth rate of 30%, the German BRP growth was 28 BRPs. This increases the German 1942 BRP base to 183. The German construction limit in 1942 is 1/3 of its 1942 BRP base, which is 61. Germany also has to add BRPs for its conquests and friendly minor countries. Germany gets 40 BRPs for France, 30 BRPs for the Low Countries, and a whole bunch of BRPs from other sources, for a total of 245 BRPs. To make it easier to figure out Germany's BRP total, the figure for Germany's BRP base is entered. Then the 2 rows are added to get Germany's total BRPs for the current year. Finally, the German diplomatic point totals and the German research point totals, both of which are partly based on the German BRP values, are entered. That completes the year start record sheet for Germany. The same procedure is followed for each major power. Next, we'll look at the BRP record sheets, which are used to record economics during each turn. For the Axis, there is a single sheet for each year, which covers both Germany and Italy. Light yellow cells are subtotals, dark yellow cells are totals. First, the German construction limit is copied from the year start sequence record sheet into the first line of the BRP record sheet. In this game, the German construction limit was reduced from various causes. The German BRP total is also copied from the year start sequence record sheet. As the year goes on, this figure will be taken from the bottom of the BRP record sheet for the previous turn. Germany added BRPs for Sweden and Finland, bringing its total to 443. Germany spent 27 BRPs on offensive operations and went down to 416 BRPs. Then Germany lost 4 BRPs to partisans. Germany records the BRPs it spends on builds, then enters the total value of the builds. This value cannot exceed the German construction limit, which in this example is 55 BRPs per term. Since Germany doesn't get any BRP grants, it is now down to 360 BRPs. With no bombing losses, Germany ends spring 1942 with 360 BRPs. The same procedure would be followed for Italy, as the Axis player went through their turn. This is easy for the Axis because Germany and Italy are on the same record sheet. For the Allies, Russia has its own BRP record sheets, but often its own player as well. There are 2 pages of research record sheets for each alliance faction, for a total of 8 sheets. For research, we'll use the examples from the video on increasing the Axis combat training level. We will focus on the Axis research record sheets, and more specifically, on the first 3 years of Axis general military and combat training research. In this particular example, the Axis have a +2 modifier for combat training research, which offsets the normal -2 modifier for the German combat training level. First of all, a code name would be selected for both projects, so you can tell your opponent what you are rolling for without revealing the actual project. Since the code names could be anything, we will ignore them. At the start of the game, the Axis assigned their research points. Here the Axis assigned 3 research points to military general research and 1 research point to combat training research. I think it's also useful to enter the season in which you intend to roll, so you don't forget to roll for a project. When a research roll is made, it is indicated by writing the value of the roll under the season in the bottom right part of the appropriate cell. Since this example explores the worst-case scenario, the research roll for military general research is assumed to be a 1. The research roll of 1 generates a modifier for next year's roll. This is indicated in the upper left side of the cell for 1940. There is no roll for combat training in 1939, so that's all the military research activity for the year. In the 1940 year start sequence, Germany assigns 2 research points to military general research for a spring roll, and 2 research points to combat training research. A second research roll of 1 is good enough for a result, because the Axis switched 2 research points from a military production project to boost the 1 to a 3. This is usually indicated by drawing an arrow. In the 1941 year start sequence, Germany assigns 3 research points to combat training research for a spring roll, and 1 research point to military general research for a summer roll. Even a 1 is enough for the Axis to succeed in increasing the Axis combat training level. Production is even simpler than research because there are no die rolls. Production is also recorded on the research record sheets because research points are assigned to production, starting in 1940. Using air production as an example, 1 research point is assigned to air production in the 1940 year start sequence, and air production is triggered in spring 1940. With an air general research breakthrough, this generates 5 BRPs of air production, good for 1 Army air factor, with 2 BRPs of air production left over for 1941. In 1941, another research point is assigned to air production for spring 1941 production. The 5 BRPs of air production from this research point, together with 1 of the 2 BRPs of air production from 1940, is enough for 2 Army air factors, with 1 BRP of air production left over. A third research point generates another 2 Army air factors in 1942. Production generates additional forces, and the size of each major power's force pool is tracked. The United States is the most complicated example because it adds forces from both production and mobilizations. We will look at the United States up to the end of 1940, including production in spring 1940 and spring 1941. The United States mobilizes in Europe in summer and winter 1940, and in the Pacific in winter 1940. Starting with production, the United States produces 5 naval air squadrons in both spring 1940 and spring 1941. The first number is the number of naval air squadrons added. The number inside the brackets is the total number of naval air squadrons in the American force pool. Next is the first American mobilization in summer 1940. This is shaded with the seasonal color yellow. This mobilization generates 20 BRPs of units, an immediate shipbuilding increase worth 5 BRPs, a 1-3 infantry unit worth 1 BRP, 8 naval air squadrons worth 8 BRPs, and 2 Army air factors worth 6 BRPs. Because the effects of the American summer 1940 mobilization are clearly marked, it is easy to check for mistakes with respect to the value of units added and when they arrive in the American force pool. The same approach is used for the double mobilization in winter 1940, which adds 40 BRPs of units, with each of the shipbuilding increases counting as 5 BRPs. Tracking mobilizations with the seasonal colors makes a set of highlighters a valuable part of a good World at War game kit. A few sharp pencils aren't a bad idea either. Diplomacy is tracked on the diplomatic record sheet, one for each side. The part of the diplomatic record sheet indicated by yellow shading is used for diplomacy itself. Each side records the diplomatic points allocated to diplomatic targets during the year start sequence. The part of the diplomatic record sheet indicated by green shading is used to record diplomatic points assigned to intelligence research. Finally, the part of the diplomatic record sheet indicated by blue shading can be used to record the 3 tension levels if a player finds it helpful to do so. The details of Russo-German, U.S. Axis, and U.S.-Japanese tensions are tracked on the 3 tension record sheets. These are self-explanatory. Tension increases and decreases are recorded, and a running total kept for each turn. In the real war, submarine warfare was a numbers game, and the same is true in a World at War. For the Battle of the Atlantic, one sheet is used to track the modifiers that apply, and a second sheet is used to record the actual results. Here are the spring 1942 modifiers from the 2020 convention game. The net modifier was +1 for Germany. The modifier for the turn is entered on the second record sheet. Then the number of German subs and Western Allied ASW are entered. In this example, there are no Western Allied CVEs. Germany did not raid. Both players roll 2 dice and consult the Strategic Warfare Combat Table, recording the results. These effects are then applied to the Atlantic transports. Here, 5 transports are sunk and 3 are damaged, leaving 17 operational. Together with the 8 Indian Ocean transports, this gives the Western Allies 25 operational transports in the European theater, 5 short of the 30 that are required. Britain incurs a 5 BRP penalty. After Western Allied shipbuilding is done, the transport totals for the next turn are recorded. The World at War oil rules are one of the more complicated parts of the game. New players may well choose to play without them, saving themselves having to learn some 9 pages of rules and avoiding the record keeping that goes along with it. On the other hand, oil was an essential part of the Second World War, and the full game requires the use of the oil rules. Oil tracking sheets are available on the A World at War website at the bottom of the PDF rules page. These make oil production and use easy to track. Using the axis as an example, for each turn the amount of oil in the axis oil reserve is recorded. This may be supplemented by oil from oil plants, Ploesti, and captured Russian and British oil sources. Then oil consumption is tracked, with the end result being how much oil is left for the next turn. Since oil is also required for BRP growth in the year start sequence, there is a separate line for that. Now that we've gone through the record keeping in A World at War, it's time to answer some questions. If you don't know what you're doing and how to do it, there's a good video you should watch. Where do you put the record sheets? The proven approach is to use 5 small binders, one for each alliance faction, and the 5th for tension and submarine warfare records. Each binder will contain tabs, allowing players quick access to whichever records they need. As to when record sheets are filled in, just follow the sequence of play. As pointed out earlier, record sheets can also help in planning, as values can be entered to help you remember when to do things, or to see if limits on research points, diplomatic points, and BRPs are being exceeded. Who should do the record keeping? Some players are more diligent than others, but in general, you have to do the records for your own countries, while whoever has the most time can handle things like the Battle of the Atlantic and tensions. This will often be the Pacific Theater players, who don't have as much to do before Japan enters the war. Perhaps the most important question is why. After all, isn't the real fun of the game to move counters around on the mapboard and fight? The short answer is that there is a lot more to A World at War than that, because it is a grand strategy game that recreates all aspects of the Second World War. But there are some alternatives to record keeping, using counters provided with the game. Diplomatic results may be indicated by counters. The Battle of the Atlantic may be tracked by adding, removing, and inverting counters. Oil production and use may be tracked using oil counters. For most players, using counters supplements rather than replaces record keeping. Excel spreadsheets are also available on the A World at War website for players who wish to use them in a face-to-face game. A World at War players, being what they are, no single standardized version exists, but they all resemble the actual record sheets that come with the game. But these options don't really answer the question of why record keeping is important in A World at War. The actual answer is simple enough. In a grand strategy game, these economic, research, diplomatic, submarine warfare, and other factors are not minor aspects of the game, any more than they were of minor importance in the real war. Many strategies hinge on these aspects of the game, and sloppy or incomplete record keeping means the players are only playing part of the game, or, even worse, that one side or the other is cheating. Record keeping in A World at War is not a necessary evil, it is just necessary. Gamers who just want to move counters on a mapboard should either team with a partner who fully embraces the game, play a limited scenario, or something else. As players become more experienced, they will find that record keeping takes little time and adds to the enjoyment of the game.